Welcome to the bullshit-free zone. Welcome to Weight Loss Biohacks. In this video, we will talk about the most powerful class of weight loss drugs, GLP-1 agonists. These are drugs that you may know under such names as Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and others. More specifically, we will speak about the following topics. Why do we want to use these drugs as opposed to anything else for weight loss? How exactly will they help you lose weight? Their health impact beyond weight loss? What exactly does it feel like to be on these medicines? What can you actually expect? Side effects and how to manage them, avoiding muscle loss while using GLP-1 agonists, and perhaps most importantly, which of the various products in the market should you get? Even the cheapest ones cost a lot of money. It involves a certain personal commitment to get on these drugs, so you definitely want to make sure you pick the right one for your purposes. First of all, why do we want to use GLP-1 agonists as opposed to anything else? Quite simply, these drugs are the most powerful tool we have at our disposal for weight loss. They're not only more potent than anything that's ever been marketed to the consumer, and there have been more than 50 such drugs, but they also have a far better safety and tolerability profile. They are actually health promoting drugs, not sickening medicines like a lot of the other weight loss drugs have been. In the past, there were a whole bunch of drugs that, yes, made you lose weight, but you paid a hefty price in terms of your health. These are the opposite. They're actually health improving, health promoting, as we shall see in a moment. Now, various forms do exist. Except one, they're all injectable drugs. There is, however, a new drug that comes in pill form. We're going to speak about all of them. There are three major active ingredients that we will be covering: semaglutide, liraglutide, and tirzepatide. What exactly is this GLP-1 that these drugs are based on? Let's cover that first. When you consume food and the food enters the intestines, two hormones are secreted: GLP-1 and GIP, collectively known as incretins. These drugs essentially tell to the rest of your body that food has been consumed, no more food should be taken in, and attention should now be diverted to digestion. For our purposes, two of the most important impacts of GLP-1 and GIP-1 are: they tell your brain that you had enough food and appetite should be throttled down. And number two, they slow gastric emptying. So they tell the stomach, go ahead and focus on digesting what you got inside. Do not try to send it downstream to make room for more, because more isn't coming. We stopped eating. And as a result, when you use drugs that activate the GLP-1 receptor, in other words, when you use these drugs that act just like GLP-1 in the body, you feel fuller much sooner. After eating a small meal, you feel as if you've eaten a large dinner and have that nice full feeling in your stomach. So you stop eating sooner, and you have less of an appetite. You have less of a desire for food throughout the entire day. This, of course, makes it much easier to stick to whatever diet you're following. Now, while most of these drugs that we'll be speaking about are pure GLP-1 agonists, as a result of increased research in this area, recently there has been one other new medicine that has come to market. Tirzepatide is the name of the active ingredient and is sold under the Mounjaro and Zepbound brand names, among others. This is a dual agonist. It activates both GLP-1 and GIP receptors, so it mimics what naturally happens in the body much more closely. And as a result, it provides both superior appetite suppression and greater weight loss. It may also have potentially fewer side effects, the idea here being that GIP counteracts some of the side effects associated with GLP-1, but that is yet to be firmly established. Research on the side effect profile of these things as compared to the other drugs in the category is yet inconclusive. However, it is solidly established that dual agonists are superior in terms of appetite suppression and weight loss. Now, what natural alternatives do we have? So instead of going ahead and spending a lot of money on these drugs, what food can I consume, or what can I take in the form of a supplement that will have similar effects? The answer is nothing at all. Do not spend a minute of your time looking for natural alternatives. They absolutely do not exist, despite what some clowns on social media might be claiming. Do not waste any of your time looking for natural alternatives, please. All right. Now, are these drugs for diabetes or weight loss? And the answer is for both. Originally, they were marketed for diabetes. For example, Ozempic was approved for diabetes in 2017. But after researchers realized that patients on these drugs were losing weight without even trying, they were rebranded and have now been introduced as weight loss agents. For example, the exact same active ingredient in Ozempic was repackaged and is now sold under the Wegovy name in 2021. Ozempic and Wegovy have the exact same active ingredient. Wegovy gives you a slightly higher dose, however. Now, how safe are these? Whenever trying to answer such a question, the first thing that we want to know is how many people have used them and for how long have they been in use? In other words, do we have vast data to use in order to evaluate safety? The bigger the data at hand, the more certain we can be of our conclusions. And the good news here is these drugs have been in use for a long period of time, almost 20 years, and a very, very large number of people have been using them. Just to give you an idea, during the last quarter of 2022, over a mere 3-month period, more than 9 million prescriptions were written for Ozempic alone, and that's just one drug in this category. In other words, we have a huge amount of data to work with, and after analyzing the data, the side effects basically boil down to just two things: nausea and diarrhea. Although, interestingly, some people might get slightly constipated. However, either effect is fairly mild. In a few cases, they may also slightly elevate heart rate. The FDA's prescribing information states 1 to 4 beats per minute is how much your heart rate might go down while using Wegovy, a very small amount of increase. Now, who should not take them? And this is once again taken directly from the FDA prescribing guidelines. Only people with a personal or familial history of medullary thyroid carcinoma, a type of thyroid cancer, should not take them because it is not yet known if these drugs elevate your risk if you already have a predisposition to this kind of a cancer. The data on this appears to point that these drugs do not really elevate the risk, even in people with a predisposition to these types of cancers. But we cannot be absolutely certain, and as a result, this kind of a precautionary statement is included. The second statement, if you have a hypersensitivity to this particular drug, do not take this drug, is a standard statement that's slapped on every drug, whether it's over the counter or prescription. Do not take drug X if you happen to have a sensitivity to drug X. Very standard statement. So, now, are they really better than the alternatives? And yes, they absolutely are. There are numerous benefits to GLP-1 agonists besides weight loss. While a lot of the older generation weight loss drugs significantly elevated your blood pressure, these things actually reduce blood pressure. The effect is not very large. It can be as low as 2 points, as stated on the screen. And as usual, whatever you see on the screen, you will have links to it down in the descriptions below. Feel free to click and read it in detail if you so desire. Hence, I'm not going to go over every single line of the research that I'm quoting. So while a lot of the weight loss medicines used to elevate blood pressure, these things actually slightly lower blood pressure. Now, you may be tempted to think that this is just marketing speak, because if these drugs actually make you lose weight, blood pressure will go down anyway, and this is just a redundant statement. And of course, researchers are smart enough to look into this in this meta-study of 33 trials. And remember, a meta-study is when you pool a whole bunch of published research without doing any research yourself, and you try to reach some conclusions based on this large body of evidence. In this particular meta-study, researchers state in a separate meta-regression analysis, the degree of blood pressure change was not related to baseline blood pressure, weight loss, or improvement in HbA1c. So the blood pressure reduction effect is in addition to whatever blood pressure you may realize as a result of the weight loss. Very, very good news indeed. How about the other important stuff? Lipids, cholesterol, inflammation. Of course, these things happen to be a problem for just about anybody who's overweight. And once again, in another meta-study, this time of 31 trials, this has been looked into as well. They have analyzed C-reactive protein, LDL cholesterol, total cholesterol, triglycerides, and every single one of them has gone down, leading the study authors to state that these drugs reduce atherosclerosis risk. Now, let's take a quick listen to what the American Heart Association says about these medicines in its official publication titled Circulation. Now, the comments are very illustrative and very important, so allow me to read some portion of them. Multiple large cardiovascular outcome trials with novel glucose-lowering agents, SGLT2 inhibitors and GLP-1 agonists, have demonstrated robust and significant reductions of major adverse cardiovascular events and additional cardiovascular outcomes, such as hospitalizations for heart failure. This evidence has changed the landscape for treatment of patients with type 2 diabetes. Both diabetes and cardiology guidelines and professional societies have responded to this paradigm shift by including strong recommendations to use SGLT2 inhibitors and/or GLP-1 agonists with evidence-based benefits to reduce cardiovascular risk in high-risk individuals with 2-type diabetes, independent of the need for additional glucose control. That last part is absolutely eye-opening. So, in other words, these drugs have such a great impact on cardiovascular related outcomes that even if the patient does not need additional medication to bring down blood sugar some more, you should still consider using these drugs merely for their cardiovascular related benefits. This is how strong protective of an effect they have on cardiovascular events. Very, very interesting indeed. By the way, I'm going to go over this very, very briefly because this is not yet solidly established like the other benefits. But as interesting as it may seem, the good news doesn't stop there. These drugs also appear to have an impact on depression. Just reading the title should suffice for now. The title of this particular study reads, Alleviation of Depression by Glucagon-like Peptide 1, GLP-1 in other words, throughout the regulation of neuroinflammation, neurotransmitters, neurogenesis, and synaptic function. Now, when a drug has wide-ranging anti-inflammatory benefits like these drugs do have, it isn't surprising for it to show a very large and broad range of benefits throughout the entire body. All right, will they help you lose weight is the next and the most important question we're here to answer, and the answer is a definitive yes. There's so much data that I'm just including a few important pieces of research here. Let us start with the weakest one that we will consider for weight loss, which is liraglutide. During a 56-week double-blind study involving 3,731 patients, the mean weight loss in the liraglutide group was 8.4 kilograms, which is like 18 pounds. Very, very impressive indeed. Now let's move on to the stronger one, but not yet the strongest, semaglutide, which is the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy. Here, the mean weight loss, the mean weight loss isn't exactly here. However, here they have given the percentage of patients who have lost 5% of their body weight and the percentage of patients who have lost 10% of their body weight. Now, losing 10% of your body weight is a complete game changer. 10% and beyond is super impressive. This is a 200-pound individual losing 20 pounds. It'll completely transform you, and it will improve just about every health marker. The percentage of people who lost that much was 45.6%. Super, super high figure. Now, let's move on to the strongest one, tirzepatide. The one that activates both GLP-1 and GIP receptors. Here, and this is, by the way, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the world's most respected journals, large-scale trial lasting 40 weeks. At week 40, the mean reduction in body weight with tirzepatide at a dose of 5, 10, and 15 milligrams were, respectively, 7.6 kilograms, 9.3 kilograms, and 11.2 kilograms. At the moderate dose of 10 milligrams, not even the highest dose, the weight loss was 9.3 kilograms, which is a little over 20 pounds. Now, these results are so impressive that I had to look up if I could anywhere find the average starting weight of the patients, and yes, it is given. The patients were not extremely obese to begin with. Their average weight was 93.7 kilograms, which is like 206, 207 pounds. So these are not morbidly obese individuals. If you have 100 pounds to lose, yeah, the first 20 or 25 may come off a little bit more easily, but these individuals weren't even that heavy to begin with. So these results are mind-boggling. They're just astounding, and nothing that you can buy legally or illegally comes close to this. Allow me to restate this. Nothing on earth that you can get your hands on will result in this sort of weight loss, period. What do we have so far? Let's recap. GLP-1 agonists have multiple benefits and promote health. They are very effective for weight loss, even if you do not have diabetes. They are very well tolerated with few serious side effects, and we will talk even more about how to minimize those side effects further. And we have very good, reliable scientific data to support all of the above. So, what exactly does it feel like to be on these medicines? This part is critical. And this is something that your doctor will probably not be able to tell you because of many reasons. Doctors usually do not take these drugs themselves. If they do, they tend to not speak about their personal experiences. And when they prescribe these to their patients, the patients do not engage in a lengthy conversation about all of the effects of the drugs. One of the reasons being people are afraid to talk about the negatives, fearing that the doctor may stop prescribing this drug that are helping them to lose weight. Besides, the doctor rarely has any time at all to sit down and engage in a lengthy conversation with you anyway. What I'm about to tell you is based on both my personal experiences, and I've used every single one of these drugs, always with a prescription, by the way, and the very many people that I have been in touch with, my personal training clients who have used these drugs, the very many individuals online that I've corresponded with, sometimes through direct messages one on one, sometimes remote clients, and in many cases, individuals all across the web whose experiences I have read through such forums as Reddit. To summarize, if you take these drugs, you will essentially be, let's say, half as motivated to eat high calorie foods. You will have less of an urge, less of a drive, less of a desire, intrusive random thoughts that pop in your mind about food. Those, sudden images of food that you see maybe 20 times a day will significantly diminish. Maybe you will think about food randomly for no good reason at all, 5 times as opposed to 20 times a day. And when you do eat, you will find it much easier to stop sooner. Allow me to explain further with an analogy, with like an imaginary situation. Let's say you prepare yourself a nice bowl of spaghetti with meatballs, start eating it, you're halfway through, and your doorbell rings. You open it up, your best buddy shows up with a large pie, with a large pizza. He goes, I thought you might enjoy this. I know you like this. You sit down, and you're like, well, would have been great if you had told me, like, 20 minutes ago, I already finished half a bowl of spaghetti with meatballs. Now, what exactly would you feel in this situation? You would still want some pizza, yeah? You would not be disgusted by it. When taking these drugs, you're not going to be disgusted by food. You're not going to be completely averse to food. You will still want some. However, the drive, the urge would be much less. And when you do eat, you will be able to stop much sooner. Imagine yourself already having eaten something similar and then being faced with food. These drugs create that effect without having to consume that half a portion of spaghetti meatballs beforehand. Let's read some user feedback. This is taken from Reddit's semaglutide subreddit. Reddit has a section dedicated specifically to semaglutide. And semaglutide, once again, is the active ingredient in Ozempic and Wegovy. These are eye-opening. I have selected these throughout, several hundred user posts that I have reviewed. One person says, it was like a switch was flipped in my brain and I was no longer obsessed with food. Another person says, it's a miracle for me. I can be at work and not obsess over food in the break area. Exactly the way I felt while working in investment banking. There was a cafeteria where I would go down to get a cup of coffee, and I had to just fight myself in order not to get a muffin. They always had muffins over there. It was quite a painful experience having to constantly hold yourself back. And with these drugs, you really don't have to because you don't desire that muffin all that much. Somebody else says, I can now eat as needed without obsession or feeling panicked and don't find myself thinking about food all day, feeling stressed in food situations. Now, the next comment I found just so illuminating and a little sad too. The person says, I finally feel like a normal person. I can eat a normal amount at normal times in the day and not go to bed hungry. Then he or she continues and says the following. Before, even when gaining weight, I was always hungry. I would eat, probably bloat, then an hour later I would be hungry again. This is a sad situation to be in, and I have heard similar comments from many people that I work with. In the absence of these drugs, there is very little you can do to really fight against this urge, fight with this, natural inclination of yours. It's a difficult life to lead. Imagine gaining weight yet still not having enough food, still desiring more. Finally, one person says they have lost the weight, and at the 0.25 milligram per week dose, the lowest dose, they're able to maintain their weight because, quote, it's just enough to take the edge off and help me feel full faster. Now, all of the aforementioned naturally brings up the question as to whether food will be less enjoyable while on these drugs. And the answer is yes and no. Allow me to explain. If you're strictly talking about the pleasure you get while eating, while you're actually consuming food, yes, that pleasure will go down. You will have less of an urge, less of a drive, and whilst eating, you will obtain less pleasure. However, for most people, while the process of eating that occupies maybe only 45 minutes throughout the entire day might be pleasurable, the rest of the day is painful. And if you look at the day as a whole, if you look at your life as a whole, if you are in any sort of situation that resembles, what we've seen in the previous slide, your quality of life should dramatically improve. Let me read just two user comments here. One person says, it has certainly helped me with my food noise, food fear, and food paranoia. Another person says, amazing. It's literally cured my depression because I feel like I'm able to enjoy my life again. I can go to social events and not worry about eating too much or not being able to control myself. I used to avoid social situations because I would always binge. Yeah. I mean, always fearing that, the next binge is right around the corner, always thinking about when you will lose control is not a pleasant state to be in. And for most people, the pleasure of eating is not worth the suffering throughout the rest of the day. So, yes, the process of eating might be less pleasurable, but if you have any problem with eating too much, which you probably do if you're watching this video, your life as a whole should be much more enjoyable and rewarding. Now, how about the side effects? How about nausea? First of all, some people feel it, some people don't. And, I've spoken to a lot of people who were like, I had no side effects at all. The only thing that I felt as a result of the drug was less appetite, and that was it. Yeah, could be. Some other people, on the other hand, do feel nauseous a little bit. But let's take a break here and, make a very critical observation. That applies to all weight loss drugs. In fact, that applies to weight loss as a whole. Recall the Lancet phase 3 trial of semaglutide that we saw before? If you do what the vast majority of doctors are too lazy to do, and if you read the entire full text of the research, there is always some beautiful nuggets of wisdom there. And this is here one that I've found. A whopping 77% of people who were given placebo said they experienced side effects. How can that be? And 34% of those people on placebo specifically had GI issues, like nausea, upset stomach, and so on and so forth. How can that be? How in the world can that be? Well, there are two explanations. Number one, and I've seen this in all research studies of this kind throughout the years, if you give people a drug, they start watching themselves, noticing the little things that would otherwise have gone unnoticed, and they attribute everything to the drug. If I give you a pill and tell you whatever, it'll make your hair grow, or it'll help you lose weight, or it'll, make your skin shinier, you start noticing, for example, the little headaches that you would otherwise not even pay attention to, especially if you're sitting in front of a computer all day long, if you're working in a noisy office. Say once, twice, or three times a week, you might get a little something that's not exactly a headache, but maybe a precursor of a headache, say a little tension in your head. Under normal circumstances, if I stopped you and asked you how many times you got a headache, however mild it might have been over the last week, you may struggle to answer and you may say 0 or, guesstimate it as 1. If you're now taking a pill or taking an injection, you will watch yourself much more intensely. You will notice every little bit of tension in your head, and you will attribute all of it to the drug. Secondly, when people are taught that they're given a weight loss drug, they will eat less even if they happen to be on the placebo, on the ineffective version of the drug. Because obviously you want to make the most out of this opportunity and lose the most amount of weight. As a result, you consume less food. And this is shown by the fact that even people on placebo usually lose some weight on these drugs. Now, merely eating less than usual can cause nausea. I've seen this many, many times. On so many occasions, people texted me, people, said to me face to face, Luca, the diet that you wrote for me, great, beautiful, loved it. Had been following it for 3 days religiously. It was all going great. Then on day 4, I got nauseous. And I kind of felt like because I had too little food in my stomach for so long, that empty stomach just made me nauseous. I panicked and I ate. It happens all the time. Now, let me pause here and talk about 2 specific experiences that I had with these drugs. This is an interesting, eye-opening experience that I want to share with you, just to illustrate all the interesting, weird, bizarre, and sometimes even eerie things that can happen when on strong medications. I'm not here to sell you these drugs, therefore, I want to give you a complete picture and tell you the bad as well as the good. The first experience isn't that extraordinary, but the second one absolutely is. The first one I had with liraglutide, the weakest one. Now, the first day I take liraglutide, nothing happens. It's a daily injection. I go ahead and do my second injection on day 2. Again, throughout the day, I'm just feeling less of an appetite, less hunger, which I'm loving. I'm eating less than normal. Awesome. Then, when it's time to go to bed, I want to brush my teeth, turn on my electric toothbrush, stick it in my mouth, and I get that feeling like I'm about to throw up. I immediately have to pull the toothbrush out of my mouth. I collect my thoughts for a minute. I can't really figure out what the hell is happening. I'm not at all thinking of the liraglutide. I'm not yet making the mental connection. I try again, and once more, after a few seconds, I gotta take that toothbrush right out of my mouth because I'm about to puke. For as long as there's no toothbrush in my mouth, I don't have that feeling. I walk back to the living room, trying to make sense of it all, and then it hits me. Of course, it's the liraglutide. It's known to make you nauseous. That didn't immediately hit me, but must be that. Then I walk once again back to the bathroom, use the manual brush, and I'm able to brush my teeth despite, a similar feeling, but much less intense. I have no idea why the electric toothbrush was amplifying that sensation. However, the strange thing is, that feeling never came back again. The very next day, I purposely tried brushing my teeth with the electric toothbrush. It was perfectly fine. I know this sounds strange, but it was perfectly fine. And that feeling never again came back. The second experience is a little more bizarre to say the least. After having used liraglutide, I'm now able to get a prescription for semaglutide. I go ahead and do the injection. It's a weekly injection. The very first night, again, throughout the rest of the day, it was all good and well. I immediately felt the reduction in appetite, and thereafter it got even stronger. On the first day, the appetite reduction was rather mild. Then it kicked in stronger. But I go to bed at the end of that first day, and my goodness, as I'm turning from side to side, I feel the water in my stomach sloshing from one side to the other. And the strange thing is, I never drink any fluids for at least 2.5 to 3 hours before going to bed. It's a habit that I'm really adamant about because I want to minimize the number of times I get up to go to the bathroom. I'm lying. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? And I, of course, immediately make the connection to the drug that I injected because this time I'm much more alert after that first experience. And I'm looking at myself in disbelief because we know that water leaves the stomach much sooner than solid food. That's why it's not really a problem to drink water with your meals. The stomach is intelligent enough to open up and let the water pass through while retaining the rest of the food, so that it can go ahead and digest the food properly. I'm lying there saying to myself, if the water even isn't leaving my stomach for 3 hours at least, how long is food going to stay in there? For 20 hours or something? How can that be? I get up. I'm now walking towards my computer. I want to do research on this. And then, for the next 3, 4 hours, instead of going back to bed, I just did research on it. Not because I was scared. I thought something really bad was going to happen to me. But I'm obsessed with this stuff. Whatever I feel, I got to tell other people about it. I got to ask other people about it. I have to see if anybody else ever had any sort of similar experience. By the way, it turns out that nobody else reported something similar. People, of course, did report having that full feeling in the stomach, sometimes even, an uncomfortable sensation, but nothing like this. But here is the strangest part. As I'm walking towards my computer, yeah, I do feel that water in my stomach, but it feels as if somebody put a plank halfway up my stomach, and the water, instead of occupying the entirety of that volume, is sitting on the upper half of my stomach. It is the strangest sensation. I'm saying to myself, even if that were the case, which I don't think it was, even if water was sitting, in the upper half of one's stomach, could you even feel that? Could you even actually perceive that? I don't think you can. Although I'm not a, not an expert in that field. Maybe there is enough nerves in the stomach to be able to so precisely perceive what's happening. But long story short, and most importantly, almost forgot that sensation too. Never again came back. The very next night, I was all right. So, two very important lessons. Some very strange and unexpected things can happen. They are almost always very harmless, as evidenced by the research data. And we're going to come back to that and once again underline that by referring to the data. And these things tend to go away and disappear as quickly as they came. Do not panic. I'm not saying that you should ignore, if something stronger, if something bigger, more dangerous should occur. Yeah, if you are worried about your health, absolutely do to talk to your doctor. But many of the stranger sensations that come tend to go as quickly as they have arrived. Oh, by the way, GLP-1 agonists tend to cause a slight headache in a lot of people. It tends to be fairly slight. Unfortunately, a lot of people mistake this for starvation and rush to the fridge. Oh my God, I've been starving so bad that I'm starting to get headaches now. I'm hurting myself. And they eat. No, it's not because you're starving. It's because of the drug. It's a mild side effect of the drug, which too tends to go away rather quickly. Now, can side effects get so bad that you'll have to discontinue the drug? And once again, if you dive deep into the research, this question is answered right there. Let's go back to the phase 3 trial published in The Lancet. If you go down, there's a table there which talks about how many people discontinued treatment in each arm of the study. There is one group of people who were given the low dose semaglutide, one group of people who were given the higher dose of the drug, and a third group that were given the placebo. With these research studies, you can always withdraw. You can even, go ahead and tell the researchers, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't even want to continue, and I'm not even going to explain to you why. I just feel that way, and they'll immediately let you go. They will never talk you into continuing with the study. So some people always discontinue the studies. With the low dose, 49 people discontinued the study, and only 19 of those discontinued due to adverse effects. So, only 5% of the people had to stop because of negative consequences. In the higher dose, 6.5% of people stopped because of adverse events, and in the placebo group, 3% of the people stopped because of adverse events. Now, the researcher can pull you from the study due to safety concerns. If, for instance, you were to say something like, I fainted, and I'm afraid it'll happen when I'm driving and I'll get into a big accident, they'll immediately withdraw you. This happened in just one case in either arm, and more than 400 people were in each of those arms. So it has a probabilistic occurrence of 1 in 400. Now, once again, let's return to the adverse events. In the lower dose, it was only 5% of the participants that withdrew as a result of adverse events, 3% with the placebo arm, so only a 2% incremental withdrawal as a result of adverse events. Taken as a total, these numbers suggest that it's exceptionally unlikely that you will have to stop treatment because you're having serious side effects. Oh, and just one last observation here. In this particular review of GLP-1 agonists, the authors, who are physicians themselves prescribing the drugs, summarize it as follows. In the clinical experience of the authors, such effects tend to be variable in terms of severity and usually resolve with continuous use, referring to side effects. Yeah, exactly. Both the data and the experiences of physicians who use these drugs on a daily basis suggest that with use, side effects go away. All right, well, is there anything that you can do to even further reduce size? Yes, absolutely. Avoid heavy, very calorically dense foods, especially fried foods, at least for a while using these drugs. Avoid any foods that may upset your intestines, that may give you the runs. If you know prunes make you go to the restroom much more frequently than usual, do not consume such foods for, again, at least a while. And during the first weeks, a few weeks, generally avoid too much food at once. If once in a while you unintentionally cannot have anything for lunch and then wind up having a larger dinner than is ideal for you, try to avoid that. Carry a little something with you. At least have a cup of yogurt and an apple or whatever for lunch, and hopefully as a result you will not have to eat too big a dinner. Avoiding muscle loss. This is an important one. Now, some concerns have been raised with lean tissue loss while on GLP-1 agonists. We will talk about this issue in detail. We'll dedicate an entire video to muscle loss while dieting, as it applies to all sorts of diet and weight loss interventions. But let's specifically refer to GLP-1 agonists. There is no valid biochemical reason you should lose more muscle mass while dieting with these drugs as you otherwise would. In fact, the opposite is true. These drugs enhance insulin sensitivity, which means that they should help preserve muscle, which is exactly what this particular research showed. In this 26-week study with semaglutide, look at how much body fat people lost, the blue line in the middle, and look at how much muscle mass people lost, the orange line at the bottom. Basically, 100% of the weight lost came from body fat, and almost 100% of the muscle mass was preserved. Beautiful results. Now, that being said, if you look at this particular review, it says something that's both good and bad. Referring to the highlighted part down below, it reads, in over half of the studies identified, the proportion of lean body mass reduction ranged between 20% and 50% of total weight lost, which is consistent with diet-induced weight loss and bariatric surgery. So, in half of the studies that they have reviewed using GLP-1 agonists, people lost 20% to 50% of the total weight from muscle, or from lean body mass in general. You can also lose, for example, a slight amount of bone mass. That's a lot. That is indeed a lot. I mean, 50% is a lot, 20% is, kind of sort of acceptable. But they go on to say this is exactly what happens if you lose weight through diet and through bariatric surgery, through stomach bypass surgery. Yeah. Now, why are people maybe losing more muscle mass in some of those studies than you would expect them to? Again, if they're actually losing more muscle mass with GLP-1 agonists is still up for debate. But let's assume for a moment that yes, people are losing more muscle mass with GLP-1 agonists compared to other types of dietary intervention. Number one, if you're losing body fat very quickly, you will also lose some lean body tissue. That's inevitable. So the speed of fat loss is one factor, and we can't really do a whole lot about it. Yes, you can lose the weight at a more moderate pace, but that comes with its own set of complications, which we'll address in future videos. We'll make a video specifically addressing whether you should lose weight fast and or slowly. The second issue is a bigger problem, and it can indeed be addressed, and that is extremely low protein intake. Now, why should people consume less protein while on GLP-1 agonists than when they are dieting with some other drugs or when they're dieting without resorting to any drugs? Here's the reason. GLP-1 agonists are truly game changers, literally. While on these drugs, you can get away with things that you would normally not be able to do when dieting. Very simply, you can consume junk food and still lose weight. Oh, wait a minute, how would that even work? Very simple. You will realize after a while, this doesn't apply to every single person, but most people realize after a while that for the first time in maybe decades, literally decades, they can go ahead, purchase ice cream, keep it in their fridge, and not binge on it. They can keep donuts in their fridge, eat one donut, and then stop, which they would otherwise never be able to do. And as a result, they gravitate more and more and more towards junk food. They still lose weight because they just eat a small amount of junk food. Can anybody tell where we saw this before? Because we did see this before. Yep, on Adderall. Especially teenagers who get prescribed this drug for attention deficit disorder realize that they can just eat junk food, but eat smaller amounts of it and lose weight. And the exact same thing happens, significant amount of muscle loss. Now, the doctors will tell you that unless you're in a impoverished country, you are not lacking protein, which is absolutely false. On the just junk diet, that's what I call that diet. Eat junk and lose weight. On the just junk sort of diet, you can consume almost zero protein. I know because I did the math for many, many people. I actually, sat down with people, went over pictures of what they ate. Sometimes I was in their kitchens weighing the stuff that they ate and worked out the numbers by plugging them into software. And there have been situations when somebody was getting 15 grams of protein a day. I know, as difficult as it may be to believe, I've seen 15 grams a day, and that's starvation levels. So you absolutely can get too little protein. Let me give you another example. Many people simply associate certain foods with being high in protein, but they don't actually take into account the actual grams of protein that they ingest. For example, let's say you ate an omelet with 3 eggs in the morning. It's filling. It's a good amount of food. But you know what? In total, it's only got 18 grams of protein. Then you ate some, vegetables and a cup of yogurt for lunch. Again, you associate yogurt with protein, yes, but only a very small amount. And in the evening, again, you ate a large salad, sprinkled some feta cheese on it. And once again, in your mind, in all 3 meals, you have consumed protein. This time is the cheese that is rich in protein in your mind. Unless you've eaten a very large amount of yogurt and a very large amount of cheese, as a result of this sort of intake, your daily protein ingestion is at starvation levels. So, once in a while, count how much protein you're taking in. It doesn't have to be a very precise calculation, but do a quick search on the internet, plugging in the kind of foods that you ate and try to guesstimate how much protein you're taking in, and target at the very least 100 grams, at the very least. I know I'm making a blanket statement here without taking into account your size, your activity levels, and all that. But you know what? I mean, 100 grams is such a conservative amount that it's not too much for anybody. As long as you're an adult over 18 years of age, which is the only population that this channel targets, then 100 grams of protein will definitely not be too much for you. Oh, and by the way, I'm generally against protein shakes. I do not think they're a good idea, not nutritionally. Nutritionally, they're just fine. But when you're dieting, there is other high protein foods that are much more filling. If you get 30 grams of protein from a protein shake, it doesn't stay with you. You'll feel hungry again in a short period of time. But if you got the same 30 grams of protein from chicken breasts, it'll stay with you much, much longer. Therefore, I usually think of protein shakes as a last resort solution. But here, in this particular case, since your appetite will already be down, chances are you will not be able to stomach lean chicken breast or very lean cuts of pork or meat. So if you find yourself not consuming enough protein while on GLP-1 agonists, absolutely do drink protein shakes. And you know what? Do not turn this into a game of how far can I push it, how little food can I get away with. Yeah, I'm usually a proponent of quick weight loss, and as said, we will make a separate video about this. But do not be like, yesterday I've only eaten 1,000 calories. How about trying 800 today? And when that happens, can I go down all the way to 500? Uh, as crazy as these numbers sound, people do it. Like, do not push it to the breaking point. And most importantly, please do not build bad habits that will be a drag later on when you stop GLP-1 agonists, because chances are you won't be on these drugs for the rest of your life. Yes, I know some people stay on them for the rest of their lives for maintenance purposes. However, there's a good chance that after a while, these drugs will stop working. So, more specifically, while on GLP-1 agonists, do not increase your consumption of junk. Do not fill your fridge with junk food. Do not skip the protein, and do not stop cooking at home. Continue with the same, old habits at least. Do not deteriorate your dietary approach even further, because it'll come back to haunt you if you do. Finally, perhaps most importantly, which one to get? So, if you can get any GLP-1 agonists, finances are no issue and you can afford it, thirst appetite is the strongest one. But please do not stop the video here and rush out to get thirst appetite, because I will suggest that you actually start with something else instead. Once again, this is the drug sold under the Mounjaro and Zepbound brand names. It may also cause fewer side effects, although, as we said, that is yet to be solidly established. The ones not to get are dulaglutide and exenatide, sold under the Trulicity, Byetta, Viteron brand names. Those are, yes, GLP-1 agonists, but they're not suited for weight loss. Other ones that you can get, the ones that are okay, are semaglutide, i.e. Ozempic and Wegovy, and liraglutide, Victoza and Saxenda. Those are okay to get, and we're going to rank them in a minute. But do not get dulaglutide or exenatide. Now, semaglutide is stronger, is more potent than liraglutide. I'm not going to go through the details of this particular study. It has now been very well established that semaglutide is superior to liraglutide in all aspects, and including in weight loss. These drugs are all injectable except one. Do not be put off by the idea of a needle. It is such a tiny needle that you literally, as in literally, may not even feel it. Some people came to me and they were like, bro, I mean, I had to look to see if the needle had actually gone in. The needle was, in my stomach. When I say my needle was in my stomach, don't think of a long needle, please. It's like less than half an inch. I literally didn't feel anything at all. I had to look and visually check. This is how pain-free they are. Literally, go ahead and pinch yourself on your forearm. That's what you will feel at the very most. However, that being said, there is, as we said, a semaglutide pill. And in the beginning, when it was introduced, a lot of people speculated that it may not be as effective as the injectable form. Turns out that it is immensely powerful. It resulted in, almost more weight loss than the injectable form. So the pill is absolutely okay to get. In fact, I'm going to suggest in a moment that this is what you start with. So now let's once again summarize all the options that are okay for weight loss. Strongest one is tirzepatide. It's a weekly injection. Both the injectable and oral versions of semaglutide. The injectable version is a weekly injection. The pill form is a convenient daily pill. They are second best. And the third best, the weakest among these, but still okay for weight loss, is liraglutide. That's a daily injection. Now, I mean, what are we even further discussing? You already told us the strongest option. Why not just go ahead and activate the nuclear option and start with tirzepatide from the get-go? You can, but I do not advocate this. Unless there is a compelling reason to immediately start with tirzepatide, I do not advocate this due to the simple reason that after a while, these drugs lose potency, they stopped working. And if you start with the strongest one, you have nothing stronger to go to because of this simple reason. I said, unless there's a compelling reason to do so, what can that be? Well, you know what? Your insurance company isn't paying for these. You got to pay out of pocket, and you got enough finances to only go one round. You want to make the absolute most out of it? Yeah, in that case, go ahead and use tirzepatide. Or you will, for example, be sent to an overseas location as an expatriate in 3 months. It's your last 3 months in the United States. In the country that you will go to, it's a big unknown as to whether you'll be able to get these drugs prescribed at all. You only got the following 3 months to work with. Yeah, you may want to go with the strongest option under such circumstances. So, with all of this said, let me summarize where I stand. My numero uno favorite, my suggestion to you, is to start with the oral version of semaglutide. This is the pill that is called Rybelsus. It is the oral pill that you take daily. It is at least as strong as the injectable semaglutide. It is, of course, more convenient, and it's got a few other advantages as well. Needless to say, you can always keep a pill in your purse, in your office. If you happen to leave your home and on your way to the office realize that you forgot to give yourself your injection, you can always go ahead and take the pill in the office. You can travel much more easily with a pill because the pen needs refrigeration after opening. One other advantage of the pill is that you can make adjustments to the dose much more easily. You may, for example, find that taking the pill 5 days a week is exactly as effective as taking it 7 days a week, and you can thus make it last longer, save some money, or make the available drug last longer. So, I suggest that you start with the oral version of semaglutide with the product named Rybelsus. That's the best. A very close second best is the injectable version of semaglutide. Ozempic or Wegovy are the brand names. If none of the two are available, go with liraglutide, the ones sold under Victoza and Saxenda brand names. And when the above stop working, you can then switch to tirzepatide. That is the summary of what you should use. All right, been a long video. I really thank you for having stayed with me so far. Now, after all this, good news, of course, the bad news, the negative is that these drugs may stop working after a while. In the next video, we'll address the following. What exactly happens when these drugs stop working? Can we prevent this? Will taking a break actually help? When and how should I switch drugs? Will switching drugs actually help? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll see you in the next video.